Hello, everybody. So, welcome to this applicant briefing for the APC26 competition. This is a pre-recorded briefing, and we're going to be hosting a live Q&A session for anybody that has any questions relatively shortly after the competition has opened. Gonna run around and do some quick introductions now of everybody who is in attendance. So, my name is James Rayner. I am the competition manager from Innovate UK. We want to move down one by one, so I'll hand over to you, Joe.
Yeah, hello everyone. Joe Lyford, part of the Innovate UK Land and Maritime Transport team.
Yeah, hi everyone. Dave Roberts. I'm an economic advisor at the Department for Business and Trade in the sector analysis team covering automotive.
Hi everyone. My name is Nikhil Tosa, program planner here at APC.
And I'm Alex Wood, head of innovation products here at the APC.
Well, thank you, everybody. So quickly to run through the agenda. So we're going to be talking about key dates, the competition summary and scope, the value for money guidance, eligibility criteria, IFS and how to use it, funding rules, the assessment, the use of AI within your application, and any additional support that you may need or want after being successful, which we hope that as many of you are as possible. So I'm now going to hand over to Alex, who is going to be talking through the timeline, scope, and technical questions. And like we said, Alex, just say next slide whenever you want me to move on, but I'll try and gauge it myself.
Yeah, thanks a lot, James. And as I said before, my name's Alex Wood, head of innovation products here at the Advanced Propulsion Centre. I'm really pleased to announce the latest collaborative research and development funding round from the Department for Business and Trade and delivered by the APC. Okay, on to eligibility. So for your project to be eligible for the competition, you must comply with the following key points. It must be UK-based and collaborative. Your project must be focused on the automotive sector, although additional cross-sector utilisation is a benefit. You must have a grant funding request between 2.5 and 20 million. A minimum of 50% match funded. So, for example, the lowest project total cost feasible is 5 million, and the funding request can be up to 2.5 million in grant. The grant ask cannot exceed more than 50% across the whole project. So, if you have RTOs or academic partners that are eligible for 100% grant funding, you need to balance this out across the project. If your project is looking to be outside of either of these parameters, you must contact the APC to let us know, and we can advise on next steps. As a project lead, you must manage this. The IFS system will still allow you to submit an application, even if some of these criteria haven't been met. And sometimes it may be as small as rounding errors. So don't fall foul of the maths. It happens every round, so please triple check. In terms of duration, projects are set to last between 18 and 36 months. Now, as I briefly mentioned earlier, we are able to consider exceptions to the lower end of the grant request and the duration of the project, but it needs to be in writing at least 10 working days before the competition closes. So we strongly recommend that you contact our business development team to discuss any eligibility queries as early as possible. Thanks, James. Okay, so on to the APC26 Industrialising Net Zero Automotive Technology Competition Scope. So the APC is looking for collaborative pre-production projects that are late-stage research and development, helping to accelerate the UK towards a zero-emission automotive future. The projects must contribute to the UK's strategic aims and direction of travel towards a zero-emissions transport vision, such as those expressed through the Automotive Council's roadmaps, must deliver on-vehicle technologies or associated manufacturing processes which support the transition to a net zero automotive industry. They must support growth, transition, and security of the UK's automotive supply chain, increasing capability whilst improving productivity, efficiency, and competitiveness. And we are looking for projects that must target post-project commercialisation. So proposals must be UK-based, collaborative, late-stage R&D projects that are match funded, focus on the automotive sector, but additional cross-sector utilisation is a benefit, contain a vehicle manufacturer or tier 1 supplier so that there is a clear route to market at the end of the project, which will need to be evidenced. Contain an SME partner with suggested maximum number of 6 partners comprising the consortia. Ensure that projects are upskilling, reskilling and sharing knowledge across the UK. Thanks, James. So as the APC platform is supported by the Auto Council, and as such, the projects must align with the strategic technologies as identified in the Auto Council roadmaps, as you can see on this slide. These are technologies that are in scope, and please bear in mind that this needs to be predominantly on vehicle. For combustion technologies, we've split the bullet now from previous rounds to be clearer for on-road, non-road mobile machinery and off-road vehicles. Projects can not only design, develop, manufacture and validate these technologies for first application, but can also be focused on design for circular economy, including disassembly, recovery and reuse of materials used in the project technologies. Projects can have a focus on physical hardware or software or a combination, which relate to the technologies listed here. Just a note for you, those of you that have a project with significant software digitalization content, you must give a clear evidence why a bespoke solution is needed and an off-the-shelf solution is not possible. We and the wider industry recognise that the UK has a strong digital capability, and anchoring these technologies and skills could deliver net zero products with greater value, faster and cheaper. Therefore, we've provided a framework tool for identifying key steps in organisations' digital transformation journeys for the automotive supply chain to help your digital maturity level to inform your R&D and innovation requirements that could become part of your project. This roadmap is a link is on the APC website for you to use as part of your application as required. Thanks, James. Okay, now on to an overview of the application process. The scope for APC26 has intentionally and largely unchanged from APC25. We're still looking for those collaborative R&D projects that design, develop and manufacture technology that works towards delivering a net zero on-vehicle technologies for on and off-road vehicles. Can I draw your attention to, firstly, to the public description, as this will need to be a short description in layman's terms of your project that is public facing and will be published. So questions 1 to 4 are mandatory. They are the applicant location, animal testing and permits and licensing. Question 4 itself is a marketing contact, so that APC and DBT communications teams can contact the right person. And then on to the rest of the application, which is split into 4 parts. So part 1 looks at the business case and the benefits of the proposed project, and that's covered by questions 5 to 8. Part 2 addresses the technical innovation, project management risks, and that's in questions 9 to 11. These questions that I've mentioned so far are all assessed by an independent technical panel. Part 3, questions 12 to 14, focuses on funding and additional value. Question 12, where to download the Value for Money Excel workbook. Question 13, looking at additionality, and question 14, the funding model. Into part 4, the questions 15 to 17 allows your opportunity to provide supplementary evidence to the workbook, and DBT will take you through the detail on that shortly. So parts 3 and 4 are assessed by the DBT appraisers and economists, who will consider your answers to the technical questions also to determine the benefits of the project from a value for money perspective. Likewise, the technical panel will also consider your answers to questions 13 to 17, and the value for money Excel workbook as well to inform their scores. It's important to flag this as when you're asked in phase 2 of the assessment process, should you get that far, to respond to the questions from the technical assessors and the economic appraisers, it may seem like they're asking similar questions. However, the focus will be different. There's a considerable amount of discussion between the two sets of assessors around the credibility and evidence provided to both the technical and economic panels. So please ensure that you strongly evidence all statements made in your application. Please be aware that you can submit a previously submitted application once, but not more than once without a material change. Thanks, James. Okay, so on to the actual questions. Question 5, we've placed why this project front and center in the line of questioning. So here we're looking for a very strong description, which should be explained in sufficient depth and understanding for the justification of why you're undertaking the project and how the project links with the consortia's overall organisational strategy. We need to understand the benefit to the consortium members in providing viable solutions to customer problems, justifying the collaborative approach, considering both immediate and future opportunities for the organisations. We've also asked you to consider if you are funding digital solutions in this project and how they will help optimise the product development process, manufacturing or product lifecycle. A useful bit of advice here is that it's probably worth outlining the response to this question in the first instance, but then complete this question last, as you'll need to pull the whole story together. So it's always worth making sure that this makes sense in the context of the responses to all of the other questions to ensure that the whole project hangs together as a whole. Now on to question 6, identifying the market and your plan to address it. So we're looking for a very well-researched and understood market and how this project bridges the gap into it. So you need to explain how you'll bring this technology to market and exploit its commercial potential. So explain the scale, the geography, the dynamics of the market with evidence working for all your calculations. Your market exploitation strategy, covering your primary market for the main outcomes of the project, as well as important additional markets, including your entry strategy, any barriers, and how you will overcome them, as well as identifying who the competitors are and how you will manage that challenge. So typically this question is answered quite poorly and lacks evidence. A good thing to do with this question is reference it back to the APC and also council roadmaps and the gaps that your project is trying to bridge when successful, and include any evidence or customer interest in the appendix for this question. Okay, so the next couple of questions relate to benefits. Note that we have a separate question about benefits to the consortia as a result of the collaboration and the external benefits to the wider supply chain. So on the internal collaboration benefits, you need to explain the benefit of the collaborative project on each consortium member, including the expected financial returns, jobs, and long-lasting skills benefits, why the consortium is essential to deliver the project, and explain how knowledge will be shared between the partners, how the project will unlock technical and commercial opportunities and partnerships even beyond the aims of the project, what further applications there are for outcomes in other sectors, and what opportunities for future R&D activities there could be in the automotive industry that you envisage as a result of the project, how you will disseminate the outcomes in the public domain, and how capability gaps are filled. While the main focus must be automotive, cross-sector mobility for technology is attractive. So if you can demonstrate this across the consortia, that is a benefit. You need to provide a substantial quantity of data and evidence here. So keep your answers brief and use the appendix well. Okay, on to question 8. So This is the opportunity to showcase the benefits for the UK supply chain. And this question switches perspective on the previous one. So look at how the project creates a stronger UK supply chain within and outside the consortium. So we're looking for that significant supply chain benefit and your strategy within this. This is where evidence is crucial, and you'll get higher marks where you can evidence how this project will impact anchoring, growing, and significantly improving the productivity and competitiveness of the UK supply chain, such as target suppliers and target customers. If you pass the initial assessment and progress to the second stage of assessment for interview, project scoring in excess of 60% on this question at interview will be eligible for funding. So it's a very important part. In the appendix, I can suggest you provide a supply chain or value stream map. These can then cover potential suppliers, gaps in the current supply chain, processes required, include companies and locations that you've already identified, and evidence the work done on the supply chain risk prediction and management. We recognise that assumptions will be made for long-term supply chains, and many of these companies will be outside of the project collaboration. So make sure that you include letters of support and letters of intent as possible in your application. Note though, do not include supply chains in your value for money spreadsheet because they will be discounted. And then onto the technical approach and innovation. And this question is absolutely critical to the technical assessment. So you must provide an overview here of the technical approach of the project, identifying the main objectives and outcomes of the project. Which elements of the project are technically innovative and how those outcomes will be achieved. So you'll need to describe the entry design and development status of the elements into the project, the technical steps through which these outcomes will be realized, evidence and any proof of concept work taken prior to the application to ensure the project is at the correct TRL level, maturity level for this competition. And remember, we're looking at late stage research and development. So the technically innovative elements of the project must be described and why they're innovative. How the resulting technologies compare to the current best in class. Again, digitalization tools and techniques, as stated earlier, use the framework on the APC website to help support this. You must also include descriptions of your test and validation activities that will be completed during and after the project, and any expected resulting IP and patents. You must convince the assessors here that what you're proposing is sensible and achievable. And note that this is the technical approach, that the project management is dealt separately in the next question. So on to that project management question. And again, this has changed slightly from previous competitions. So here we're really probing your ability as a consortium and partners to define, deliver, and manage the exploitation of a successful project. So you really need to clearly articulate what will be created, but how you will manage the project effectively. So you need to describe what the physical outputs and deliverables for this project will be, clearly justifying the quantities where applicable. That's quantities of parts and tools that are used in the project. Your proposed work package structure, showing a cost for each work package, your project plan, and this needs to be in enough detail that you can clearly articulate significant milestones and gateways and any links or interdependencies between work packages and milestones. And that is a really key point. Your approach to project management must be described, identifying any major tools and mechanisms that you'll use to achieve a successful outcome. Specific detail on project startup and how that will be managed. So getting projects up off the ground quickly, where the resources come from to achieve that. The project sponsors must be identified within each consortium partner, and the project team with the key members of that project team profiled. Another important part is how escalation will be managed and governance. So please note that you must submit a project plan or a Gantt chart as an appendix to this question. Make sure that it's readable at 100% zoom and that you have clearly laid on there key milestones and interdependencies of the numerous work packages, along with who is leading what. So I emphasize that again. Please make sure you have clearly identified testing gateways, procurement gateways, and intended SOP dates. So as we specified earlier, this project is around the long-term benefits after the project. So those key milestones to take the project forward in the future are absolutely critical. Okay, on to question 11, the risks. So moving into that, this really is the last question in part 2. So sitting alongside the previous question, here we ask about risk both within the project lifecycle and beyond, such as risks to the successful exploitation, the benefits recognition that have been identified in your project so far. So you should provide a very well laid out risk register with suitable mitigations and budget assigned where applicable. This question is again answered very poorly generally. It seems to be one of those questions which is left to the end and not pulled together comprehensively, and it's quite generic. It needs to cover risks to all of the consortium members. Otherwise, it highlights the lack of cohesiveness in the project bid. Okay. So just want to highlight one part of the economic assessment that is new for this competition round. So this is an additional APC technical information question that is within the VFM document once downloaded. So if you go to tab question 18, APC, TRL and MRL, you'll find the following 2 tables. The purpose of these tables, firstly, is to understand the current and targeted end status of your technology and manufacturing readiness levels as part of your project. This will help indicate the expected beneficial outcomes. So that's a question that's been in for a few competition rounds. But below the TRL and MRL tables, you will find the following technology classification table. And here you'll need to present technology options, or you'll be presented with technology options, and you need to allocate an appropriate percentage of the project to those different classifications. So please ensure that question 18 is filled out in its entirety during the application. Okay, and that's the end of the application process from the APC side and the technical side. So I'll hand over to Dave Roberts from the DBT analysis team.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so as I said at the start, my name's Dave Roberts. I'm an economist here at DBT, and I lead the value for money appraisal for APC competitions. Next slide, please, James. Thank you. So what we're going to cover today briefly in this presentation is firstly setting out what is value for money or VFM, why it matters, and why the government need to care about it. Secondly, I'll set out the information and evidence we need to see from you to be able to make a robust assessment of value for money. And thirdly, helping you to understand how we'd like you to fill in the value for money workbook, which has been mentioned already. Okay, so what is value for money and why is it important? So government spending has to be good value for money for the UK taxpayer. We're required to ensure that public research and development projects undergo a full VFM assessment and meet a minimum threshold. So we in DBT determine each project's VFM based on a benefit cost ratio or BCR, and that's based on the information that you provide us. Next slide, please, James. So how do we calculate that BCR? Well, it's relatively straightforward. We look at the expected benefits to the UK economy of the project, and then the cost of the project to the Exchequer or the government. So the key benefits from projects that we monetize as part of this process are the jobs that are going to be created, CO2 savings, and R&D spillover effects, which I'll explain a bit more later. And we use the data and the information from your written applications and the VFM workbook to inform this. When we have those benefits, we'll adjust them for risk and for additionality. Additionality is the extent to which we think the project would have gone ahead anyway without funding, which again is informed by the information that you provide. Next slide, please, James. Okay, next, we're going to go through the information and the evidence that we need from you to inform our VFM assessment. So what we have here is a table setting out what information we use and where we find it. So in the written application, which we've just gone through, the questions are around additionality. So we expect to see why APC funding is necessary. 50% grant intensity is the maximum, as it says there, but obviously the less the better. If you think back to the BCR equation, the smaller the cost, the better the outcome. And we also expect to be the project benefits to be explained, and also explain the risks and mitigations. So the next thing we look at is the VFM Excel workbook, which you'll have downloaded. It's an Excel spreadsheet with several tabs where we'll ask you to quantify the benefits of your project. Essentially, you put the numbers in the spreadsheet and use the written application to evidence those numbers and explain how you've estimated them. So while it's really important that we've got the numbers, it's also really important that we understand how you've estimated those numbers and where they've come from. So please make sure that you explain those numbers in your written application, like how you've modeled them, what are the numbers informed by or based on. Can you provide any additional working out or sources or citations, anything like that can help us when we're kind of going through your application. The third set of documents we need are the appendices. Again, please provide any further evidence to justify your claims and the figures that you've set out in the Excel spreadsheet. And lastly, we have the responses to feedback. So we'll write to you with some questions once we've read through the application. So we'll write to you with some questions of clarification to make sure that we can get all the information that we need, and we'll use those responses to inform our assessment. And then also, if we think it's necessary, we might also arrange a phone call with you to clarify any final points. So all four parts of the application that I've set out here are needed for our assessment, and they support and complement each other. So I'll now go through the four different parts of the VFM assessment. Next slide, please, James. Okay, so what we're looking for is a logical narrative around why benefits and costs are reasonable, where they've come from, details of your calculation methods, including any assumptions that you've made. We need to be able to understand how you've got the figures that you've got in order for us to be able to use them in our assessment. So evidence is absolutely crucial. And we'll use that evidence and any documentation you've provided to validate the information that you've given us. So evidence might be diagrams, tables, internal documents that help to explain your additionality argument or why you need funding. There might be letters of support that helps justify points that you've raised. But my main request is that you make it clear and easy to follow. We don't need tons and tons of information, just the key points that support the figures that you've provided. If we feel like you haven't provided sufficient information and sufficient evidence, we will give you the opportunity to provide that through the written feedback and potentially the phone call as well. We're not going to be able to go through tons and tons of information, as I say, but we will give you the chance to go through that with us. And ultimately, if you haven't provided sufficient information, that could mean the application could score lower. Okay, next slide, please, James. Okay, so this slide I'll briefly talk through the key benefits that we're interested in and what we're expecting to see. So I've broken down into 3 columns for the 3 different benefits, and then the red boxes explain the information that we'll find in the written application, and the purple boxes are the information we need from the VFM Excel workbook. So the first benefit we'll look at on the left-hand side is R&D spillovers. Just to say what they are. Basically, when an organisation undertakes R&D activity, it's not just the organisation itself that benefits. R&D tends to spill out outside of the organisation, outside of the sector potentially, in the form of that sort of gained knowledge, and that provides wider benefits to society. And it's those types of wider benefits that we're interested in assessing. So in the written application, we'll be looking for information such as whether you're registering any IP for the technology, are you going to share the project results, how are you going to share any project results, do you feel like other firms or industries are going to benefit from this project, and then also if their technology has applications outside of the automotive sector, then yeah, please do explain that as well. Because we're looking for how and where the technology and knowledge will be used to assess those wider benefits. Okay, so in the VFM workbook then, with regards to R&D spillovers, there's a tab on spending profiles for the APC grant and your own funds, and then also follow-up investment after the project. So this spending split out into R&D spend and then other capital expenditure, and we're interested in how much you're spending on R&D during the project, how much you're spending on R&D after the project, and also any other capital expenditure that you're planning as part of this. But what we do need is to explain how those profiles have been calculated, and then how the follow-on investment has been estimated as well. So who's going to be spending it, what's it going to be spent on, and how is it sort of unlocked by this particular project. And then also explaining the project impact on the TRL and MRL levels as well here. Okay, so the next benefit I'm going to talk about is the employment benefits, so jobs. Obviously, your jobs are going to create jobs both directly and indirectly, but specifically here, we're interested in the direct jobs that are going to be created as a result of this project. So we look at jobs in terms of jobs created as a result of the project, so new jobs, but also jobs that are going to be safeguarded as a result of the project. So by safeguarded here, we mean jobs that are at risk of being lost within 12 months if the project doesn't go ahead. And that's really important. It has to be if the project doesn't go ahead. So we want you to tell us what would happen to those jobs without the project. So the written application has the opportunity to provide all of that information. And there's a question in the written application specifically for that. And then obviously the data can go in the value for money spreadsheet. There are 4 tables in the jobs tab where we ask you to provide the number of jobs, as well as information on postcode location, the MVQ level of the job, and the job title. Please include the name of the partner that's creating those jobs in the table as well. And they should be filled in, jobs should be filled in cumulatively in the jobs table. So if you're creating 1 job in year 1, and then there's going to be additional 2 jobs created in year 2, the figure you should put in year 2 is 3, because we assume that that job in year 1 is going to continue for a few years. So as I say, please input the jobs cumulatively. Please don't include indirect jobs or supply chain jobs in this table. And we're only interested in direct jobs within the project partners. Then that's really important. Okay, so finally then, CO2 savings. How does your technology deliver CO2 emission savings? So we want you to explain which vehicles will be displaced by the vehicles that will have this new technology that the project's going to develop, and why are they considered the best alternative. So if a consumer is choosing a vehicle, why is this comparison that you're using the most appropriate alternative that they would choose? So please, when you're filling in this part of the spreadsheet in the application, please ensure there's consistency with emission regulations. In the written application, we'll ask you to explain all of that and explain the vehicles that you're going to be using as comparators. And then you'll explain how you estimated the figures that you have estimated, which I'll explain in a second. So in the value for money workbook for CO2, then we ask for sales figures of the vehicles that are going to be using the technology and the CO2 savings versus the comparative vehicle. And we want to explain the project's impact on the CO2 savings versus the comparative vehicle. So how much of their saving between the comparator and the project vehicle is as a result of this particular project. Next slide, please, James. Excuse me, sorry. Okay, so additionality. We'll talk about this briefly. We need to understand why APC funding is essential for the project to go ahead. So we don't want to be giving out public money to projects that don't really need it, because that's not a good use of taxpayers' money. We want to fund projects that wouldn't otherwise happen or wouldn't happen in this particular shape. So there's a question in the written form for you to tell us why you need APC funding. And that might be that you're unable to raise sufficient funds from other sources. If that's the case, then in terms of evidence, then please provide us with evidence. Proof that you've been declined credit, for example, or you've been unable to raise funding from other sources. It might be that your project doesn't meet a sort of internal rate of return for internal R&D spend because the project's quite high risk. So please show us analysis that demonstrates that. It might be that there might be within the organization sort of internal competition from a lower cost location. And then again, please provide us with any analysis that demonstrates that. We'd need information comparing location options and the cost gaps and information on the decision-making process that's led to that. Essentially what factors you've taken into account and when that location decision is being taken and how the APC funding makes a difference to that. One of the key things that we look at to help us understand additionality is the counterfactual. So that is what would happen if you didn't receive APC funding. So would the project not go ahead at all? Would it go ahead on a smaller scale, or would it go ahead on a different time scale, for example? Or maybe it would go ahead but elsewhere, for example, overseas. And please set out all of that clearly as you can. And we just wanted to set out what would happen in the absence of funding. And then obviously, again, please provide any evidence for any of that information that you give us. Okay, thank you, James. Next slide. So we also need to understand the project risks. Obviously, R&D projects are risky by nature, and we need to be confident in that the main risks have been identified and that you have mitigation strategies in place. So in your written application, you should demonstrate that you've considered the different types of risks. So that might be technological, commercial, route to market, project delivery, and also that you've assessed the impacts and developed mitigation strategies. So we're looking to see that you understand those risks and have strategies in place to mitigate them. Next slide, please, James. Okay, so for the last section of the presentation, I'm going to briefly talk about the value for money workbook that we've talked about already and help you understand how to fill it in. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so firstly, you need to download the value for money spreadsheet, which is in Excel format, which is in question 12 of the application. It should be fairly clear where you download it and upload it to and from. So this is an example, on the next slide. Yeah, so this is an example of a tab from the Value for Money workbook. The grey cells are where you should enter your data. The yellow cells are internal calculation cells, so please don't touch the yellow cells. Just put your copy your data into the grey cells there. The yellow cells will just do the calculations. Again, obviously you don't change any of the calculations or the formulas. And if there's orange cells, that means there's a drop-down list that we want you to select an option from. So please don't forget to do those. As I said, on the jobs sheet, we require cumulative figures, and there's guidance at the bottom of each tab that provides that sort of information. And any numbers that you put into the grey cells, please do explain them in the written application. The relevant question in the written application, we've explained it in the relevant application or in the appendices as well. Next slide, James, thank you. Cool, yeah. Finally, there's a tab on wider environmental benefits of the proposed project. So we'll ask you to fill this in as much detail as you possibly can, but it's not directly feeding into the value for money assessment. But it is important in terms of the sort of long-term direction of the APC competition for us to understand the information that you can provide in these boxes. So please do be as detailed as you can on this one. And yeah, I think that's it from me. So if you have any questions, my email's on the next slide, I think. And yeah, I will leave it there, I think, if the next slide is coming. Yeah, there we go. There's my email. So yeah, I can't remember who I'm handing over to. Apologies.
So that will be handing over to me. So thank you very much, Dave. And thank you, Alex, as well for your section earlier. So going to move on now to the eligibility criteria. So obviously, Alex covered this earlier, but I just wanted to cover a few more points from Innovate UK's perspective. So to be a lead organisation in an application, your project must be a UK registered business of any size, collaborate with other UK registered organisations, involve at least one grant claiming micro, small, or medium-sized enterprise, be a grant claiming recipient, and include in your consortium a vehicle manufacturer or tier 1 supplier who supplies parts directly to an OEM, original equipment manufacturer. To collaborate with the lead, an organisation must be one of the following: UK registered business of any size, academic institution, charity, not-for-profit, public sector organisation, or research and technology organisation. So there is some information on the screen there about partners and subcontractors. So non-funded partners, you can include as many partners that do not receive any of the competition's funding, for example, non-UK businesses. Their costs will count towards the total eligible project costs. Subcontractors are allowed in this competition, and subcontractors can be from anywhere in the UK, and you must select them through your usual procurement process. You can use subcontractors from overseas, but you must make the case in your application as to why you cannot use suppliers from the UK. So this competition does allow you to submit a previously submitted application, but please be aware that addressing assessor feedback does not necessarily guarantee that an application will be funded, even if something does come up in the assessor feedback. And we have on the screen there what classes as a previously submitted application or not a previously submitted application as by Innovate UK standards. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to start and complete an application in the Innovation Funding Service, or IFS. So to start an application on the Innovation Funding Service, you will need to create an account. Businesses should use the Companies House lookup function so that we have your company number, and other organisations will need to enter their information manually. You must ensure that you enter IFS as the correct organisation type. Whether it is you starting an account as a lead applicant or whether it is you starting an account as a partner being invited by the lead applicant. These are the categories that you'll be asked to split out your project costs into in the finance section of the application. The application finances video will provide further instructions on how to complete each of these sections, including how academics must include their finances. There's also guidance within each category on IFS, and you'll be able to click on this hyperlink when you can view the slides, which will be attached to IFS. In your project finances, there are 4 categories, and each organisation within an application must complete their own finance information. So there's your project cost, which is where you add in your cost by category, your project location, which is where you enter the postcode for where most of the project work will take place, your organisation, which is where you need to add the details of your organisation, including size, turnover, and number of employees, as is applicable. The size that a business declares here, along with any research category, if applicable, is what IFS will use to calculate your funding level. So it's important that you get this right. And lastly, your funding, which is where you must indicate if you are requesting grant funding with a yes or no. Declare any funding you have received previously for the exact same project activities, as you cannot receive public funding for the same activities twice. So on your funding section, if you are requesting funding, please click yes. Only answer yes to the other funding question if you've received funding for the same project activities. Anything that you declare in the other funding field will be deducted from your funding source figure, because we cannot fund the same project activities twice. This will not be visible to you in the finance summary in IFS. However, it will be deducted later by Innovate UK. For minimal finance assistance competitions, you do not need to declare your previous MFA funding here. However, this does not apply to the APC26 competition. If you have answered yes to the other funding question, then this must be because you are requesting double funding from a public body. That is money for items that you previously received funding for. The screenshot on the left is where you add this information. Please be careful that you are declaring correctly. Your answer may make you ineligible to progress in the competition, so please do take care. So for collaborative applications, which will be the case for APC26, IFS will highlight to the lead applicant any partners who have outstanding project finances to complete. All finances must be included in the application before the lead applicant can submit the application. It will also check that your research participation costs are within the required limits. Before you can submit your application, all organisations within an application must agree to the terms and conditions. And again, IFS will not let you submit if this is outstanding. We also want to stress how important it is for you to submit your application as early as possible. Customer support can help resolve any issues you might have when submitting, but only if they are contacted in good time before the deadline. The lead applicant carries out the responsibility of ensuring that all partners in the application, if applicable, have completed their assigned sections and accepted their terms and conditions. And you can see from the graph here the times at which people are contacting customer support just before a competition deadline, and obviously you can see the amount that are contacting last minute, which may lead to queries not being resolved in time. So when preparing your application, it is important that I share with you some things you should consider if you plan to use AI to support you. So Innovate UK does not endorse or oppose the use of AI technology. However, we are seeing an increase in the use of AI applications. It is necessary that you do your own research as to whether this is the right tool for you and consider the pros and cons of using this technology. If you do use it, Innovate UK does not accept any responsibility for any impact on your idea or proposal. Whilst AI offers many benefits, it is important that you are aware you are potentially sharing your idea with the world. So now we're going to talk about some funding rules and how your grant would be awarded should you be successful. Firstly, there are some instances where we would not be able to award you any funding. This could be if you have an outstanding final claim or independent accountant report, IAR, on a live Innovate UK project. In this case, you will not be eligible to apply to this competition as a lead or a partner organisation. We will also not award you any further funding if you have not made substantial efforts to exploit a previous award or fail to comply with the grant terms and conditions. We award all of our grants under the UK subsidy control regime, which incorporates various agreements and frameworks, which you can see on the screen there and will be available in the slides on IFS after this recording. This slide shows the definition of a subsidy. Innovate UK is unable to award funding to organisations that are considered to be in financial difficulty. All organisations that are awarded funding are subjected to financial viability and eligibility checks. If you are an applicant who is conducting activities that will affect the trade of goods and/or electricity between Northern Ireland and the European Union, as envisaged by the Article 10 of the Windsor Framework, then your grant would be awarded under European Commission state aid rules. In order to be eligible to receive state aid, you must pass the undertakings in difficulty test. This only applies to limited liability companies that are more than 3 years old. If you have a parent company, the test can be performed on your parent company or holding company. If you are successful in the competition, we will apply this test as part of our viability checks. If you are unsure of whether you are eligible to receive state aid, please seek legal advice or further information from our website. You can also contact our customer support services team if you have any questions. So this competition is being run under the Research, Development and Innovation Streamlined Subsidy Scheme, and this includes 3 research categories of feasibility studies, industrial research and experimental development, plus SME, RD&I support. Note that the competition you're applying for does adhere to these 3 categories. So if your project is industrial research, you could get funding of your eligible project costs of up to 70% if you are a micro or small organisation, 60% for a medium-sized and 50% for large organisations. If it's experimental development, which means your project is nearer to market, then you could get funding for your eligible project costs of up to 45% if you're a micro or small organisation, 35% if you're a medium-sized, and 25% if you're a large organisation. So onto the assessment process now. So to help you understand what happens after you've submitted your application, Innovate UK have produced a series of videos, and the link to the YouTube playlist is on this slide, which again will be available on IFS, where you found the link to this recording. If you pass the technical assessment and proceed to the project setup stage, you have a further 8 steps to complete during the project setup period, which can take up to 90 days. Please be patient during this stage. Assigning MSPs and getting finance checks completed can take several weeks. Please ensure that you share the T's and C's with your legal team at the earliest possible opportunity. Once notified, you will have 30 calendar days to do this. The final step will be to sign and return your grant offer letter. We must first approve it, and then you will get a go live email confirming that you can start your project. Your project will always have a start date of the 1st of the month, and you can only claim for costs incurred and paid after your project has started. Before we end, just want to touch on our partners, the Business Growth Team. So if you are a small to medium-sized business and you're a successful applicant, you will be contacted by the Innovate UK Business Growth Team about working with an innovation and growth specialist. These specialists focus on helping you to grow your business by accessing the right finance and funding, facilitating connections to potential partners, and protecting your intellectual property and access to many other tools to help you to scale up and access the global market. More information about the good work that the business growth team undertake with our SME community can be found via the link on this slide. Here we also have some useful links to help and provide support to you during the application process and beyond. We highly recommend that you read our general guidance and check out Business Connect's Good Application Guide. If you need some help with pulling together your collaboration agreement, then please do check out the Lambert Toolkit. We cannot otherwise advise you on how to put this together. We have also provided some other useful links to keep you updated and in touch with all of the opportunities that are available. And lastly, you can find contact details for the Advanced Propulsion Centre and customer support services on the screen now, as well as links to Innovate UK Business Connect and Business Growth. And if you have any questions throughout the competition process whilst it's open, please direct these to the Advanced Propulsion Centre at the email on screen, which is info@apcuk.co.uk. So I'm now just going to give a quick thank you to everyone attending and to everybody who's been part of making this briefing. So thank you, Alex, thank you, Dave, and thank you to everyone else who is supporting the background, Joe and Nick. And thank you very much. For the rest of you want to say some quick goodbyes, and then I will stop the recording.
So, thank you very much, James.
Yeah, thanks, James.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody. And thank you for attending this briefing.